some Swiss chard in here. I'm just going to let that cook for a while I talk to you about them. Now from home, of course, I want to start with making the right dough for pizza, and that means to start with a cresciuta, and that means a growth. And this is the way my grandmother did it. You want to start with some water, about a half a cup of warm water in a small bowl. And then you want to add, about 3/4 of a teaspoon of dry yeast. And then just mix that around until it's dissolved, you see. And now this is something that's going to sit around for a few hours, and as it sits, of course, it develops a wonderful tang. And now I've added, a half a cup of flour and about 2 tablespoons. And all I want to do is mix that around, and that makes a very liquid-looking combination. You want to cover this with some plastic wrap and put it aside. And really, you could make this the day before and then bring it out the next day and then make your dough. So I'm going to just set that aside. Now, after that cresciuta has really developed a tang, well then, you can add it to the second dough that you have to make. And here I've got some additional water, about 1½ cups, in a bowl with about a teaspoon of yeast. And now what I want to do is add the cresciuta. I have to tell you, this is a very old one. I've had this in my refrigerator a long time, and every time I make pizza dough, of course, I just lop off a piece of dough from the pizza that I'm making that day, and that is saved for the next pizza. So this goes in, you see. And then what you want to do is just break this up with your hands, and make sure when you bring that out of the refrigerator, you let it come to room temperature. You don't want to put it in the warm water and the yeast cold. You want to put it in at room temperature. So now, that's fine, and now I can start to add flour to this, and I'm using unbleached flour. And here I've had about 3½ to 3¾ cups, and I'm not going to add all of it at once. So now I'm going to put this aside and add some more flour to my board, because now I've got to get that into a smooth ball. But before I do, I've got to shut off my Swiss chard, because that's a little surprise for later on. So now I want to knead this until it's nice and smooth. And that's going to take you, about 5 or 10 minutes to do. Get all of it off of your fingers as you're going along. And now with a recipe like I'm doing today, you can get 2 pizzas out of this dough, about 13 inches in diameter. I'm going to show you a couple interesting ways to make pizza. So knead it well until it doesn't stick to your hands. And that needs about 5 or 10 more minutes of kneading. And then bring back that dough. I'm just going to dump out the scrapings there because I don't need those. Then bring back the dough, the bowl, and add some olive oil into the base, because now all you want to do is take that dough and wipe the bowl with it, just like that, you see? And then turn it over. And then you want to put on, a piece of plastic wrap over the top. Get it tightly over the top. And put it off to the side where it will rise for several hours. And then, when it's risen, and I'm not even going to clean off my hands for this, it'll look like this. Now, the longer it rises, of course, the better will be the flavor of this, the tang. And that's what I love about this pizza dough. So now this should be ready to take out. So let me get a little bit more flour on my surface here. So take that out, and look at how soft and wonderful that looks. I get rid of that. And now you can shape this, you see. I'm going to cut this up into 2 pieces. So there. I think that looks about just where I want it. Now, the peel. And now while I'm doing this, I've got my oven on at 450 with stones in the base. And now for this, you need to really put on a lot of cornmeal. And that's just generic cornmeal. You can buy that in the grocery store. So I've put an awful lot of that on. And now what you want to do is get your dough off the board and onto that peel. So I want to lift that up carefully and just do that to it, you see? And so here is another pizza, all rolled out, and this time I've put it into a rectangular pan. And now what do I want to put on top of that? Well, I've got some nifty ingredients here. Here I've got some onions that I simply caramelized with a little bit of olive oil until they have this nice, wonderful, sweet taste and this look to them. And it just wouldn't be the same if I had put these on raw. I mean, I just wouldn't have the same flavor. So I caramelized those. Then what did I do? Well, then I took squash, oiled it a little bit, put it on a bake sheet, and ran it under the broiler so that it had sort of a charred taste to it. So now I'm going to add that, but by no means are you relegated to this. You could use anything. You could use spinach, you could use green zucchini, whatever. And then, after that, I had Swiss chard. And here all I've done is take Swiss chard and saute it after I cooked it in a little bit of olive oil. And now I'm putting this over the top. And this has got a little garlic with it, olive oil, salt, and pepper. And doesn't this look wonderful? I mean, this is really a very nutritional meal. Something you could have just with a salad and a glass of wine. And you see how creative you can be with pizza. And this is what Ralph wanted to know about, the pizza alla Mariana. Well, I kept the secret for you, and I hope he's watching. So that looks good. And now I want to put on some cheese. And here I've got, oh, I missed those onions. Here I've got some Asiago cheese. That's a cheese from northern Italy. If you didn't have Asiago, you could use something else. Use Swiss. Use whatever you happen to have. And then, after that goes on, well, I've got some cheese here that I really love, which is called ricotta salata, you see. And now that's a ricotta cheese that's salted, and we tend to get ricotta cheese as a creamy cheese, but this one is salted. And now it can be grated, and it can go right over the top of this pizza. Again, if you don't have this cheese, you're using something else. After all, cooking is creative. So now that goes on, and that's ready to go into a 450-degree oven. Tell me that doesn't look delicious. So now in it goes, and it's going to stay there until it's cooked.